let's just get into it. So
Sure.
what you're gonna do here is, for those of you that haven't seen this before, while Michael cues this up, is it takes months. In the case, like we use an average of about 6 months for a new map. Nexus a little bit longer than that, and by a little bit I mean a lot. And because sometimes and it's not like it's like you're playing it. There's concepting, there's arting, all of these things that happen. So what these streams do is Michael's going to take us through and he's going to show snapshots of what the iterations were in time. I believe, like for Foundation as an example, it ended up being about 500 iterations. How many iterations were there for Nexus?
Oh, I didn't count, but I've picked 5 of the most consequential ones, and this spans a 6-month time period from the first playable iteration, which is what you're looking at on your screen right now, to what I'll eventually show you guys is like the final blockout that, excuse me, that eventually went on to get arted and is the map that you see in game today.
So where is this in the from how far from like initial like iteration 1 is this?
So this is the very first playable iteration of Nexus that I submitted. Obviously, like I spent a lot of time before this, sort of like I probably spent maybe 2 or 3 weeks to get to this point, like where we hadn't even played it. Like I was experimenting with different things. And then this is the first cut of the map where I was like, okay, I can put cover down and we can actually play test this for the very first time. So
interesting that you had that chunk in the middle that you couldn't kind of rotate through. Like it was almost like it looks like a 3-lane map. Is that correct?
Like I'd love to just sort of like walk through sort of like what the differences are here. So obviously you can see that some things actually kind of made it all the way to the end, which I think is really interesting. Like you see the stairs, like, you know, this is here in Nexus, like, you know, the way that the two, it's almost actually identical really, which I actually find really fascinating looking back on it now. But obviously then there are huge differences. There's a 3rd lane up on the top here that didn't appear in the map. So there's sort of this circular area up here that kind of overlooked the middle. And you can see these guys here, which are sort of these towers that were overlooking the map that eventually became sort of where the bolt hawk and the hammerburst spawn were actually pathways that went through to this 3rd lane. So we'll kind of go over like the iterations and kind of how this changed, because this part was really interesting how this sort of evolved. Yeah. But you know, obviously this iteration had problems. I'll go over the problems in a second. I'll just show the rest of the map here. So then here's sort of the bottom side of the map. You can kind of see that these 2 pillars actually kind of made their way all the way to the end of the map as well. But you'll see, I'll show in the future iterations that this area actually got a lot of different changes as over the life period of the iterations.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a dumb question. So this is obviously done in the editor here. Like the art, the design on the pillars and stuff like that, is there like an assortment you get to pick from? Like how much of this is just
like this thing? This is like from Vasgar. This is like a Vasgar thing. And like we just kind of like work with what we got. Like this pillar, like I think this is from like Afira or something. Like we just kind of like mash it together and like just make it work. Like obviously you can see here that I was going for a locust vibe. Like I was like, you got like the big emulsion pit and like all like the rocks, and it's obviously like underground.
Let's take that for a second. So when you sat down and you wanted to make this map, out of the gate, you knew you wanted a Gears 2 vibe map, right?
Yeah. So for me, like I was really fascinated by, you know, like obviously I knew this being a fan of Gears and playing a lot of Gears, but like, you know, as a level designer, I kept hearing like, oh, like Gears 2 maps like are legendary. They're the best maps. Like, you know, they'll never make a map better than a Gears of War 2 map. And I was like so fascinated by like, you know, like what was it about the Gears 2 maps that were so attractive to people? And I sort of like, you know, went back and studied a lot of the best ones, like people are gonna groan, but like Blood Drive, and then obviously Jacinto and River, and like, you know, I spent a lot of time studying those maps and kind of trying to figure out like what were the elements of those maps that made them so special and so unique and generated so many unique moments. And one of them was what I talked about earlier, which was you know, sort of the one-way ins. You know, the concept of kind of like an area you could go into and sort of put your back to the wall. And then, you know, now you're kind of in a position where no one can flank you. And there's this really exciting moment where someone sort of has to push you and then you kind of have to defend. And like, and the fight is extremely clear. You see this sort of in Jacinto, like the reason why that map was so legendary for Guardian in Gears 2 was like when you put your leader in the tower, like there was just this epic battle like up and down the stairs to that tower, and like it was just so intense because the stakes were so high, right? Because it was so difficult to get in there that when you finally got in there, like it was epic, right? It was sort of like this amazing moment, and I kind of identified that as one of these things that these Gears 2 maps sort of used as like a way that they created these really memorable moments. And then there are these other things too, like, they were typically 2 lanes, so it was easier to sort of, people were sort of funneled to action quickly. You see sort of like in a 3-lane map, typically there's a chance that you can go down a lane and you actually don't meet anybody there because everyone goes somewhere else. So with a 2-lane map, the chance of having combat when you go to the center line is extremely high because there's only two lanes, divided between 4 or 5 players, right? So that was something that I thought they did very well. Obviously, for 5v5, obviously we've changed to 4v4 since, but for some modes. But with 5v5, 2 lanes can be problematic because sometimes you kind of dogpile onto a fight. There's too many players for the amount of cover that you have, and it can be uncomfortable. People are kind of fighting over cover. So that's where I'll kind of show in the later iterations kind of how I solved that problem with the map. But you can see that in the first iteration here, it's actually a 3-lane map. So you can kind of see my journey, sort of how I kind of brought it back down to a 2-lane, kind of how I originally wanted. And then the third thing I wanted to call out was that those maps were able to create close quarters combat, but without sacrificing awareness. One of the things that can be very not a great experience when playing Gears of War is when you're running around the map and somebody kind of like walks out of a wall like holding right hand and just chunks you, right? And like that isn't a great experience. You want to have awareness of like where the enemy team is, where they've gone out of spawn off the initial, where they've set up, where they might be flanking, and on a smaller map with lanes that you have good visibility on, it's much easier to find and use that information to your advantage. So that was something else that I wanted to sort of bring into Nexus. So those are sort of the 3 main things. There's other things too, but yeah, I can just keep going through the iterations.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's jump in time. So how far is the next one after this one?
So it's actually kind of funny because like most of the iterations that I'm going to show were maybe like between 2 to 4 weeks in between, because when we start a map, that's typically when it's most chaotic. Like, we're trying ideas, like, things are failing. We'll try something new. We'll throw something out. And then, the longer you go, the more things start to settle. Like you find things that people like, you find things that start to play well, and they start to say the same. And the things that you change become more fine-tuning instead of like, big structural changes, right?
So 2 questions though, just before you jump on, because I think this is important. What modes do you test on? And is there a base mode that you, like the LDs use? Of course, I know the answer to this. Is there a base mode that the LDs use when we're doing the playtest sessions that allows us to know that it's going to work for every mode, including PvE and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so typically we'll start in TDM because that sort of shows the true colors of a map. Obviously, like, when I play at home, I love playing King of the Hill and different modes, but TDM kind of shows you like the raw dynamics of a map. It'll if there's issues with the spawn, those will come up in TDM. The fights that people flow to naturally and the sides of the map that people find value in, you'll see that very naturally in TDM. You want to make sure that when people when the only objective is to kill the other team, you want to make sure that the dynamics of the map are healthy. You want to make sure that there's a reason to go to all the different places in the map. You want to make sure that there's a reason, that there's significant enough draw to either weapons or positions that people actually want to play a balanced sort of strategy on the map. Because like what you don't want is like you play the map in TDM where the only objective is to kill the other team and people just sort of dogpile on one side of the map. That's not what you want, because that's kind of being lazy. If you're like, well, King of the Hill sorted out because then everyone will just go to the ring. Like that's not a responsible way to design a map. Like you want to make sure that like, the raw dynamics of like the geometry and the weapon dynamics that you're putting down are working for the map. And then once that's working, then you can go and make all these other things. Like, you know, oh, now I'm going to work on my King of the Hill rings. Now I'm going to go do, you know, escalation and gridiron and stuff like that.
So this version feels a lot more closed off than current.
Actually, you'll see that it's actually quite the opposite. Like, one of the problems with this first iteration was actually quite how open it was. Because you'll see that this middle area, like obviously this changed quite a bit. Like this was just, this could not hold a fight. And what I mean by hold a fight is like, there are enough options that people can actually stay there for like an extended period of time. If there's like one piece of cover, like there is here, and then there's like one, two, three, like 4, 5 elevated positions surrounding it, like who's gonna ever be here except for just to quickly grab that boom shot? You know, that was the first problem that came up with the map. It was like, you know, this middle area doesn't hold a fight. Only people just want to stay back. They just want to hide here. They just want to hide up here. So that was one of the things that I wanted to solve was like, how can I make it so that people actually want to come in here, like have Nasher fights, like brawl over the weapon, and actually feel like they can have a fight here, right?
Yeah, that's great because I think that's my one thing that I don't really vibe about Icebound is that like middle area just feels so exposed that you kind of like want to run through it as quickly as possible.
Right, and that was actually a similar problem with the other side of the map too. Is this area didn't really hold a fight either because for similar reasons. When we have secondary fights, and what I mean by a secondary fight is like you have like your primary fights, which is like the center line, and then you sort of have like your secondary fights, which is sort of like the fight that's in between the spawn and the center line. And what we really want for the secondary fight is that you want to have a lot of options because this is typically where you're coming out of spawn. So when you come out of spawn, you know, there's a couple of things you want. You want good visibility because you want to know that where people are. You want to know which fights to go to. You want to know which weapons to play for. But then you also need options to get out of spawn because if you don't have options, other players can trap you very easily. And that was a problem with this first iteration because you can see there's not really a whole lot going on here, right? It's just like, you know, there's like one piece of cover there, and then like you kind of go down here and you know, you can't, this isn't holding a fight. There's like no cover here. Yeah. So basically what would happen is people would just sort of hide around this wall. They'd be like, you kind of sneak around here and like, you know, they kind of hide here and like, they'd try to like ambush you coming out of spawn, but there's no healthy fight here. There's no like awesome like cover system here where people are having a good fight. So this was another thing we needed to change. We needed to sort of create like a healthy secondary fight that gave options to players trying to come out of spawn. So I guess that I can move on to the second iteration. That's enough of this one.
Yeah, this is a long.
Yeah. So anyways, that's iteration 1. So it's actually kind of fun looking back on like the old stuff because it's nostalgic and it's also a little embarrassing because like there's stuff in here that's obviously like not great, but you know it's just it's iteration. It's you know we iterate until we find the best version of the map, right? So.
Oh, and people will notice that initially this map might have been not called Nexus.
Oh yeah, it's called MP Hollow, which, like, you know, and it's actually kind of funny. We changed that name like super late. It was like Hollow like up until like a month or something before Op 5, and I was like, can we change it to Nexus? And they were like, okay.
Yeah. And everybody keeps asking, there are no Easter eggs on any of the new maps, and that is largely a product of time. With us trying to get like 5 maps out for this operation, you know, investing in an Easter egg is a luxury that is great, and we love them as much as you guys do. You know, we felt like having more maps is better than having less maps with Easter eggs. So. Right.
Okay. So this is iteration 2. So there's a couple really interesting changes that happened in this iteration. So first of all, this might look a little familiar to people. This like eye-shaped cover. This is when this came in. So this obviously actually made it all the way to the end, but it sort of was pushed over to the right, and you'll kind of see how that changes over time.
Can you just go back for a second? That was the cover nodules. Do you want to take a second and explain those real fast?
You're going to talk about cover nodes? Yeah, I can talk about cover nodes.
Just because you showed them for a hot second there.
Yeah. So actually, it'd be really interesting to show you guys how we make cover in a map. So I'm just going to make a piece of cover, and you guys can kind of like just see how we make a piece of cover. So I'll grab one of these blocks, and let's just say we're going to make like an L-shaped piece of cover in Spawn. So we have this like block, and it's like we can like sort of change the shape of it, and then we drag that, make a new one, rotate it 90 degrees, and it's actually kind of interesting how the cover nodes are laid out, because you might not always know this. You might not know this playing Gears, but like every little cover node that you slide into is hand placed by a designer. So what we do is we create these little red boxes, which are, this is a cover node, and then it's attached to what's called a cover link. So you see like this one guy here. I'm just going to turn lighting off because it'll be easier to see this block. But these are the individual slots that you slide into when you take cover. And then when I middle click here, it's sort of like auto, like it helps out. It like auto turns it into a low cover and like generates the mantle and generates the cover slip. And sort of what we do is like okay, like it goes to here, and then it like turns here, and then then it goes all the way to here, and then that's like a cover. And you can see that like when it's like an inward sort of like, I call it like an armpit, like it's one link, but that's because when you're in cover, you'll know this in game. Like when you walk along there, you can walk from the left corner to the right corner. But on the outside, we don't do that, right? Because there's a cover slip. So you'll see that on this side, I make a node that just goes to here because this is where you mantle. And then we make another one that goes to the end because you can't mantle here. So you'll see that there's no mantle here, but the mantle, the space that you can mantle is between node 0 and 1, and then the last one's here. So you can see sort of how...
And if you're wondering, for those old school Gears or Gears 4 or 5 fans, node 0 is a little bit of a reference there.
Oh, was that did I make a little reference there by accident? Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll just quickly kind of finish the cover, and you guys can sort of see like what it's like to just sort of make a cover.
Yeah, cool.
Like if I was not working on Gears, I would find this fascinating, but I don't know if the chat finds it fascinating.
The chat, other than people continue to say, how come we can't get the PC editor, is they think this is pretty neat. So okay. I think this is a kind of a very, I think it's really cool. So thank you for, so I know that this was a bit of a left turn from the,
yeah, I just wanted to show that.
Yeah, it's helpful.
I just want to really quickly just build the cover here, and then I just want to jump in game and just slam into it, so that you guys can sort of see like what it's like. So it's lighting isn't built, so it's black, but see they can slam into it. Like there's the cover slip here. Like it feels really good. It's snappy. And there you go. Like every cover in the game is like it's hand. Like the nodes are hand placed, right? So
how hard was it to do the covers around round objects like the trees on Bahanu?
Not too difficult. Like okay. You just do it a bit differently, right? Like the thing that's nice is when you sort of like middle click, it auto snaps it to like the collision. So say we have like let's see, I'm just gonna grab like a cylinder or something. Some of these don't have great collision, but let's say we have like something like this. This might not have good collision, so I might be kind of just about to embarrass myself, but it'll just like build to the collision of the object. Actually, it's working. So you'll see that how it just does that.
So even though the node is a block, it basically works.
Yeah, like it'll work. Like okay. Obviously we have best practices, like curved cover, like we have to be very careful about it because like typically like it feels much better to work on like sort of boxy stuff in Gears of War, but obviously we want to like bring variety to the kind of cover we bring to the game. Yeah. Like I was actually really happy about like the little circular ones on Spire, like the little like fountains and stuff.
Yeah.
And
well, there's that great fight in Exhibit.
Yeah, Exhibit was a huge challenge because I actually brought a lot of curved pieces of cover into that map.
Yeah.
But back to this. So.
Anyways, yes. So version 2 of the map.
Version 2 of the map. So big changes. So one of the problems in the first iteration was that the way to get into this tower was too long. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was this long sort of like alleyway, like that kind of snaked its way into this tower. And what I did in this iteration was I kind of streamlined it, and you can see like this would eventually become the way that got into that secondary fight in the final version of the map. But it's sort of this big staircase now, because the problem was people were kind of nestling into your tower and you couldn't really get them out because it was too long to get in. So I sort of streamlined that with this staircase here. We still had a problem where like this path was really windy and long, and like this lane wasn't really super fun to fight in, but we'll get to how I fix that later. So this was how I solved that problem. Down here you can see like I made a lot of iterations to this fight. So I sort of like built it up a bit, added some more cover in. I added like sort of this like little pocket here you could kind of tuck into. I added sort of some cover here. So this, and then there's a one-way drop here that gave people that extra way out of spawn that I was talking about. So like, you know, now like if somebody's kind of, you know, buzzing around here, like you could actually run this way and then jump down and get behind them, which was something that was, which was good. But the problems that came out of this fight was now people were just sort of like tucking back here and like kind of oppressing your spawn exit, which wasn't really fun. And that coupled with sort of this blind corner here was creating a problem in the map. But you can see sort of how like this area was starting to develop, which would eventually become sort of the bottom lane. And like this area was starting to develop, which obviously this is way longer than it eventually ended up being. But I really wanted there to be sort of like this fun sort of like, you know, flanky type route that kind of brought you from the bottom to the top of the map. And then obviously we talked about earlier how this guy made its way in, and that eventually made it its way into the map.
Do you want to explain what the red things are real quick?
So the red things, these are the tarps. So obviously in the final version of the map, you guys are familiar that these became sort of like these emulsion waterfalls. But these you can shoot through. So there was like a sort of a gameplay thing that I was kind of experimenting with on this map, which was, you know, what could we make sort of like soft cover? Like could we make sort of the idea of like a wall you could sort of see through and shoot through and sort of like get these opportunistic kills. Obviously, like there's like way more of it here than what eventually shipped in the map. Like there's like a whole bunch of it here where like we were having like shotgun fights over this thing here, and like, you know, there was this one where you could sort of like run back here and then like lancer the guy when he was picking up the boom shot. So yeah, we were doing a lot of experimentation with that. I think where we landed in the shipping map was a good balance, where it isn't like obnoxious, but it's like, but it's still like cool. I think like one of the things I was struggling with was like how to balance that, because like in the early versions of the map, it was just kind of obnoxious. Like you can see how much wider this is than the one that eventually shipped in the game. Like people were getting like really weird angles through it. Like the people were like shooting the boom shot pickup like through here and stuff. So like that wasn't very fun. But yeah, you know, this is iteration 2. So still some problems.
Iteration 2 is that we're showing, but there were multiple iterations.
Right, there was many iterations in between, but this is the second one that I'm showing. So, some improvements here. Still some problems with spawn camping and options coming out of spawn. Bit of an improvement here. Still problems with like, you know, the sort of the reason of this, like why this lane is here, and like, you know, is this actually adding to the map? But then like obviously some developments here. So we'll move on to the third iteration now. Yeah, hopefully you guys find this kind of fascinating.
They do. No, this is you have someone that says they want to be a level designer.
Awesome.
So.
Awesome.
I don't even know if we're hiring. Look on our jobs page.
Okay.
Where did you go to school? What did you do? How did you actually get this job? That's like, I think that's a relevant question.
I went to Vancouver Film School. They have like a game design course there. And that was like a 1-year course that was like pretty intense, but it was really, it was super fun. I learned like a lot. And you know,
and people travel from all over the world to actually go to Vancouver Film School to take that design program. We have a scholarship. I don't know if I think you know this, that we partnered with Blackbird Interactive to do a scholarship for female game designers.
I heard about that.
Yeah, it's really great. And you get a 6-month internship at the coalition when you're done.
Okay, so this is iteration 3. So I wanted to show this one because it was a bit of a wild one where I was like, I'm gonna try some terrain. So I like put some terrain in here because I wanted to kind of like, I was like, oh, like, you know, it's cool, but it's like I want to like have some like cool like Nexus caves, and like I didn't really have that, so I wanted to try it. And like obviously I got rid of it. It didn't work, but we'll run through it.
With the mushrooms.
Yeah, because like obviously I was a little unhappy with that secondary fight, so I was like, like, you know, can I try something new and different that really like makes the map feel different? So like, so actually, oh, I forgot to mention. So this is actually the first iteration where the spawn. No, actually, that's a lie. Never mind. Spawn did not move. So you spawn here, and then you see it's kind of like there's a bit of terrain here. There's a bit of like there's some cover that's sort of like on like different angles and stuff like that. But it didn't really work out because, again, players didn't really have options coming out of spawn. Like there's kind of this fork in the middle where you can go left and right, but ultimately you're going back to the same place. It's sort of like what we used to call like a diamond shape, where like two paths bring you back to the same place. So you're not really making a choice. You're just sort of making like a, it's just like part of the fight, right?
Yeah, I feel like one of my least favorite maps is Dry Dock, and I feel like the coming out of spawn there is such a frustrating experience. And I'm happy that you guys put a lot of thought into like, what is that first 15 seconds of your fight look like? Because to me, it's such a critical way. Yeah, I think having the ability to have options coming out of spawn.
Yeah.
Really makes it feel like a good experience. Like I look at Vasgar as being a great example of how you can come and you can go up and you can go down. Like you've got two very distinct paths. And I think
actually struggled with the spawns a lot on Vasgar. I'm actually not entirely happy with it today, but I'm happy that you like it.
Well, I do. So there you go. Vasgar is one of my low key one of my favorite Gears 5 maps.
Thanks. Anyways, so as you guys can see, in the regular version, in the final version of Nexus, the spawn is here, but in this iteration, the spawn is down here. And this was something that I kind of held on to for a while, and eventually I had to sort of like move it up there because it was causing so many problems. But as you can see, like you can basically see in the spawn like from here, right? Like you can slam into this block and like you're basically shooting in the spawn. Like this poor little like rock in the middle is the only thing that stands between like literally like the bottom lane of the map and like your spawn point. So like this was a very precarious, and like looking back on it, like this was awful.
Every TDM player is like, thank you for not doing that.
Yeah, no, this was actually quite awful. Like I'm happy that I tried like bringing in sort of like a terrainy sort of thing, but it didn't really work out. I'm sure like I could have made it work with a few more iterations, but you'll see in the next one I went back and you'll start to see what eventually became the final version of this secondary fight start to take shape. And then the other consequential change in this iteration that I wanted to highlight was I finally got rid of this top lane. So these sort of became sort of like what I was talking about earlier, which was like these one-way in, one-way outs. So like this back area sort of became like a clutch spot where you could sort of come back here and try to make a like a, you know, try to survive if you're getting rushed. And you can shoot through this guy here.
Does the PvE player in you, like when you're building these maps, do you think, oh, here's a great place to sort of set up like my horde base?
Yeah, like for me the stairs were that. Like I wanted to try to make a map that was great for versus and hordes. So like that's sort of why I added the stairs, and I was happy that they sort of survived like through all the different iterations to the very end, because you know, I think it makes a very interesting sort of PvE experience where you sort of have to defend like two different lanes. You know, and there's like lots of opportunities for interesting fortification placement and stuff like that.
That being said, the pouncer on this map like is infuriating, but still.
Right. Yeah.
I say they in a good way. Just
like I was actually kind of excited about this one way in. Like obviously I changed it eventually down the road, but this would have been kind of neat for PvE, but it really wasn't really working out for PvP. Like the problem that we were running into was, and then this is the problem that I'll start to talk about in the next few iterations, was like the next problem that I was trying to solve was sort of like, how can players exist in this middle fight? Because they just weren't able to. You can see that I started to experiment with these high covers here, because what I was trying to solve was like, can I give people cover where they can actually have a fight over the weapon and not get sniped or lancered from this tower here? So I was like adding in this high cover, I was adding in these pillars, you know, I was trying to like add in different elements to protect players, but you'll see that eventually like I had to kind of use a bit more of a heavy-handed solution in the end to sort of bring close quarters combat to this middle lane. And you can see like this made its way in, which eventually is like sort of like a high wall in the final version of the map.
I'm going to ask a question now. You don't have to answer it.
Sure.
and just tell me when's the right time to sort of me to ask it again if this isn't it. When do you start thinking about weapon placements?
We're always thinking about weapon placements, but obviously I'm sure people that are watching the stream have noticed that the weapons are like just changing all the time. Like there's a breaker mace over there, I think, in this iteration. There's like double snipes. So like I was trying to go for like a double snipe tower thing here, which didn't really work out.
Oh, like kind of like a river vibe?
Yeah, but it didn't really work out because the map was playing too slow. We were seeing players posting up on the stairs, sitting in the towers, camping, and then if you were a player that didn't want that, your only other option was to go to the second lane, which this was a very limited lane. Like there's not a lot of space here to have a fight, except for in here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give people, a wide open space where they could really have like an interesting initial fight that was sort of close quarters, and this just was not achieving that. So you'll see in the next few iterations how I fixed that. But another thing I wanted to point out was that this building sort of started to take shape here. So this is when this guy came in. So I'm sure you guys noticed that the only thing in here before was the pillar. So I kind of pushed that back. This kind of came in because what I noticed before was that there wasn't enough like meat in here to play with. Like there was this pillar on the back, but you just rush in. It was very one-dimensional. Like you're just defending this pillar, and that was kind of it. So when I brought this in, it brought a lot of life to this room because you could have you could fall back, right? So like you could fall back to the middle pillar, the enemies could come in, and then you could actually have sort of like a fight between here and here, which was sort of lacking before. So obviously this didn't really change much between this iteration and the final version. This mostly stayed the same, except for sort of like the width of the barriers here, of the banners here. So yeah, that's iteration 3. It's the wacky wild terrain one.
This room is great because it's almost like how Mercy.
Yeah, the Mercy Church.
The church gets used for 1v1s.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels like that's like that very similar for that kind of a vibe. Where I could see this becoming like a wager 1v1 arena.
Yeah, I think if I wanted to do that, I'd probably have to put in like a bit more cover. But it's definitely an exciting place to fight. And like obviously I was talking about that earlier about sort of the idea of like, I put my back to the wall and like there's this exciting moment of like, they have to push me, like, or like, they have to push in, and you have this very clear fight that I really wanted to have in the map. And there was a lot of iteration. There was a lot of feedback sessions where people were like, well, like, are you sure you don't want to put a door on the back? Like, like, I just can't get in there. And it's like, and I was very like stubborn about it. I was like, no, it's one way in, one way out. We don't do it on our maps. We're doing it in this map. You can go play some other map.
and I think that's one of the things. So I mean, I'm not. I participate in the not so much now that we're in lockdown, but before I would drop by some of the play tests and stuff like that. And I know that, and then speaking with you guys, I know one of the things that was a challenge on the tile maps, and even on a little bit of other maps, is you kind of inadvertently kind of fall back in the same sort of fight rhythms. And I think one of the things that why this map is resonating with people is it does kind of break that rule a little bit, where it feels fresh, it feels different in terms of the way the fights play out, and the vibe that is there isn't the same as a lot of the other traditional MP maps.
Right, and that's always the big challenge for us as designers is like, how do we create experiences that differ map to map while at the same time respecting the best practices that we know as designers create a solid Gears experience. And that's always sort of the never-ending struggle, like how do you make something new and fresh without betraying what makes Gears Gears, and that's always a difficult thing to reconcile. But we'll move on to the next iteration.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm asking too many questions. Let's go to
that's fine. We're flying. We're almost at the last one here. So this is going to be iteration 4. So this is the one where I think you guys are going to start to see the map looking a lot like what the final version looks like. You'll see that I made some big sort of changes to bring sort of more close quarters combat to the middle lane on the the what is in this version the side with the towers on it, and there's some interesting choices that kind of reverberated into the final version.
Somebody asked, have you guys at TC ever been inspired by threads or posts by users on the forums or Reddit to create new maps? How much are you guys there reading that? Like, do you get like a little bit of people are like, oh, I want more of this type of a fight? Is that something? I mean, you guys are all big. I mean, the trick is you guys all play the game a lot. So kind of what you're feeling is, is aligned with what people are saying sometimes just because you guys play the game as much as everybody else does.
Like,
is that fair?
Like, obviously it's interesting to see what people kind of are looking for, but I wouldn't say like we see something on like Reddit and we're like, okay, let's make that. Like, it's not really like that. But like it is interesting to see sort of like what people are looking for. And like I have seen like there were posts where people were like, oh, like I'd love to see a map in the Hollow, and you can actually go back. There was a post like that, and I remember looking at that, and it was actually while I was iterating this map, and I was like, yes. But,
validated.
Yeah. So this is nearing the end here. This is like the fourth version that I'm showing. So you'll see this is the version where I finally moved the spawn up to the top, which was a huge turning point for the map, because like this was the one where finally like the stairs became your stairs and not just part of the map. So like this, you kind of felt like these were sort of like your stairs, and like this really helped a lot with coming out of spawn, because what it meant was when you're on an elevated position coming out of spawn, it's really nice because you have really good visibility on the map. You can see player movements, you can see like flanks they're making, and then you also have a lot of options, right? Like that's sort of why I did like the two-pronged stairs here, because I wanted, if you saw people down here, like you could come down here and then you could get an angle on them, or you could like come down here and flank them. I never wanted a position where the enemy could just kind of make you feel stuck. You always want the player to feel like they have an option. And then obviously like you can see that this secondary fight started to take shape. Like obviously there's the little path at the back is missing there, but this is the iteration where this cover came in. And this didn't really change too much. And obviously this frag grenade pickup changed, it moved over there. But yeah, I was missing this and that was actually the problem with this iteration was this fight was feeling a little more good. It was more intuitive and there was a little more fun around these pillars and stuff, but people were still getting a little like choked up here, because if somebody was holding this middle lane, they had to get almost like into Nasher range to get through to anywhere, right? So what was really missing was sort of like a way through here. So like you'll see that in the final iteration, I sort of built that in, but the secondary fight was feeling good, but what was still missing was the options. So then the options eventually came in. And then you'll see like up until the very end, the little tower still is here. I was really stubborn about it. Still had this little raised tower. So you'll see like this very interesting thing. This is when the ceiling came in. This is when the roof came in on this guy here. And it's actually kind of funny because this roof is still in the final version of the map, but not for the same reason that it originally came in. Because the reason why I put this roof here was because I wanted to protect players from Lancers, from these raised towers. And then as everyone knows, eventually I lowered these towers, so this roof didn't really have a purpose. But it kind of felt cool to be under here, so I kept it. So that's kind of how that happened. It's kind of an interesting little tidbit. But you can see sort of like, I still had these high covers here. I still had this problem where people were kind of, they were playing very like passive and safe. And eventually it was kind of due to these towers, and they needed to be lowered, and I needed to make a connection here. And you'll see that in the next iteration I made that change. Because people were still being funneled through these stairs here, right? So it was very easy to make people feel like they didn't have any options, because all you had to do was kind of sit here and just sort of Lancer, and like they had to sort of come through these stairs. There was no way to flank this fight, because even their flank that was available to them, like as we talked before, the diamond pattern, it just brought them to the same place, right? Like if you're trying to figure out a new way to attack this fight, you can come down here, you can come down the left, you can come down the right, you're ending up at the same place, right? So in the final version, when this stairway came in, it was really a moment where the map really clicked because it brought in that missing option that I think really makes the map flow very nicely in the final version. But yeah, like you can see, this is starting to look a lot like the final map. Like, we've got like, this little spot is coming in, like, like this obviously is settled down. So yeah, we're almost there, but there's still some problems to iron out.
While you're bringing up the next one, question for you. Like you mentioned Vascar and how there's a few things you're not happy with. How do you know when a map's done?
You don't?
No, because I would imagine it's like one of those ones where you can work on it forever, right? Like it's kind of how
you kind
long
of can
is a piece
work
of
on
string.
it forever,
Yeah.
and like
But that's what I mean. But how do you know when you're like, I don't need to keep like I could putz with it, but I don't want to. Like is it just when your producer's like okay, you're done?
It's when people are clearly enjoying it when they're playing it in playtests. Like that's kind of what it comes down to. Because at the end of the day, we're making a video game. We want it to be fun, and if people are having fun with the map in playtests, then that's a great place to be. Because like as a level designer, we we play a lot of iterations of maps that are awful, and we know what bad looks like, and we know what good looks like, and when people are having fun, like usually that's when it's time to get moving. But you still make changes. Like even when this map was being arted, I was making little tweaks and stuff. Like you always want to squeeze in little changes, and it's just the way it is, right? Like,
so is this the final map here?
So this is one I'm pretty excited to show. This is the final version of the map, and I wanted to kind of walk through some of the final little changes that I made that really made the map click and I think make it like a special map.
Okay, at the beginning of the stream, the first version you showed had the Marxa where the HP is, and it has been stuck in my head since then. Like I feel like I seeing it, I'm like, yes, the Marxa way better than the HP. Why did you change it?
Because it was kind of what I was talking about before. It was like at the end of the day, I was trying to make a map that felt like a great Gears 2 map, like something that could just come out of Gears 2. And what was kind of preventing me from getting there was sort of like these long-range engagements that were kind of propping up of some of the fights, like and the Marxas and the raised towers and sort of like the way the stairs were set up and the way that I was flowing players into the fights and the limited options players had to flank and move around those spaces was making it so people were sort of like turtling a little bit, playing a bit longer range. And what I really wanted was I just want people to like just go in there and just have a fun brawl. Like I just want them to have a nice like a good old-fashioned shotgun fight with opportunities to support, but the support was kind of drowning out the brawl. So you'll see that in this final iteration, I made some changes that I think were sort of like necessary to kind of bring that to life. So we'll kind of walk through some of those changes.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean it makes sense, but like I said, and I trust your abilities to get there, but I see it, and all I was thinking about the Marxa.
Sure. So yeah, so finally the tower comes down, and so now it's no longer this big raised thing. It became a secondary fight. So that was actually one of the things that was very awesome about it was we were able to kind of squeeze another secondary fight into the map. Like it was kind of a two birds with one stone kind of deal where like we added a fight to the map and then we added an option to the map. So like this was probably one of like the most consequential changes that happened in iteration was when this sort of came down and this curved staircase came in. And I was actually kind of happy that this was the way I had to do it because the curved staircase, I think, really brought some more Locust vibes into here because you can see that like, if you go back to Gears 2 and play like the Nexus portion, there's a lot of curved staircases and kind of like, not quite perfectly 90-degree geometry. And bringing this in was, I think, like just a little cherry on top that made it feel like, like there's kind of this Locust vibe where like, there's not everything's on like a perfect 90-degree, like, there's like a, there's a bit of like, irregularity here.
That's a hard push up those stairs, though.
It's difficult, but I think it brings a lot of personality to the map. So anyways.
Oh yeah, no, criticizing that might be just more me as a player.
Right.
Like I just it's like I know that I've tried to do that push and like you really need to wolf pack that
Right.
push.
Well, you'll notice that this low wall here is actually a little higher than normal low cover height. Like normally it's 96 from the ground. This is like a little higher. And that was because I want people to feel safe when they're here so they could actually make that push. Because before people were sort of getting crossed out here, and like you can kind of come up here and they can't really lancer you, and then you can kind of make your way up and do what you got to do. So anyways, yeah, this was probably one of my favorite changes. And then the other side that we were talking about, the other fight that was lacking in options, the fight was feeling good, but we were really lacking in some options. So what happened was this got broken down. This used to be like sort of a high wall. And we brought in sort of this back area here. And this was another really awesome change that brought a lot of life and texture to this fight where, not only were you just fighting in this straight line here, like now, you could fight up and down this fight. You could kind of hold this back area. There was like, this like areas to like kind of bounce and like have a more intimate fight at the back here, or just, kind of look for an opportunity to attack, right? So this was another change that I thought was really, really great for the map, and that I was really happy with. And then
I like this part too. This part, I didn't notice it until actually you just going through it now. It's got a little bit of a reactor kind of feel, like those two kind of like back corners in reactor where you've kind of got these bigger nodules that you sort of dance around and muck about with that are kind of fun.
Sure. Yeah. You mean this guy here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. So and then the very, very last thing I did on the map, which was actually probably one of the most crucial things that I changed, was the raising of this and adding the 2 doors instead of the 1 door. Because as you guys saw previously, every iteration of the map up until this point, which, by the way, this is 6 months later. This is like 6 months after I started working on this map. There's a 1 door here. And the problem with that was that, the fight was not really healthy. Like, you would come in for this initial fight, and then if you imagine the 1 door there, like, you just kind of slam into the guy in an open space with no cover, and you're just kind of like, oh, like it's like a really messy fight where neither of the 2 people really know how to play it. Like, oh, do I just stay back and lancer him as he goes in, or like do I just run in and just fight him in open space? When this came in, like it was like night and day. Like now all of a sudden, like, I can run in my side, I can run in behind him, I can fight him here, I can fight him here. Like this just brought so much life to this fight. And this was actually the last change I made. This was like the final change that I made on the map was the 2 doors here. And then also like the raising of this area was something that was sorely needed because what was happening was people were fighting between here and there. So you'd see people sort of fighting from this area all the way to this area. And what raising the stairs did and adding these 2 pieces of cover was it actually blocked just enough line of sight that these areas felt separate. And one of the most important things you can do in Gears level design is separating your fights. You want to make sure that each, fight feels like it's its own fight, and you don't want sort of like a guy that's, all the way on the other side of the map just sort of like lancering. Like that's never a great experience. So like this brought just enough texture and separation that it really like made these areas kind of feel like their own area and their own sort of fight, and was sort of like the very last little thing that kind of clicked the map into position.
So when do you start talking? So now that we're kind of at the end, like of what it looks like, when do you give it to the artist there? Are you having conversations with artists along the way, or how does that work?
Yeah, so once we're happy with it and we're like, this is playing really well, like then we start talking to the artists, and they do what's called like a visual zero, where they look at the map and they're like, okay, what can this be? And then they sort of like do a plan. Obviously, I had built this to be the Locust Hollow. The way that it sort of works is, the artists have the final say on the art on the map. We just make it fun, right? But if we can present something that's compelling enough, and they dig it, like, they'll do it, right? So I presented this idea as being like the Locust Hollow, and the blockout obviously looks very like Locust Hollow-y, and like the artists saw it and they were like, that's cool. And I was very fortunate that they looked at that and they were like, you know what, like let's do it, like let's make the Locust Hollow, and
Whose
then,
idea was
the
the
rest is
Corpser?
history. Sorry?
Whose idea was the Corpser?
Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe Boyd. I'm not sure.
I love it. I want to shoot it though. Like it feels like something should happen when you shoot it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Nexus. That's my 6-month journey to make this map.
Oh my god. Well, it's funny, and without trying to gas you up too much, I think there's certain maps that kind of become iconic and synonymous with like Gears, and certainly of a particular game. You know, I would argue Foundation is like the prototypical Gears 4 map, and I think will go down kind of as a great Gears map for years and years and years to come. And I feel like this Nexus map feels like that map for Gears 5. I think this is a really
That's some pretty high praise, Dana.
I'm not just saying that. I'm not saying that just because you're on here, but I really think this it adds a dynamic to the fights that I really like in this, and I'm curious to see if it's gonna move into the competitive side. Like I'd love to see the pros play on this. Like to me, like I'm excited about this map. I think it's an interesting map. So
thanks.
There you go. You know. I'll insult you off screen later. I don't want you to get too big of a head. So do you want to roll us through? So you didn't. So River obviously like. I don't see any real questions around Nexus specifically. I know we talked a little bit about how do you balance the needs of PvE versus PvP. Excuse me. So I don't know if you need to kind of go into that.